Hi, this is Kelly, co-host of Two Broads Talking Politics, part of the Demcast family of podcasts. This year, Two Broads Talking Politics was invited by Representative Maxine Waters' office to participate in the third Annual Millennial Media Row that happens before the State of the Union address. It's a super terrible time of year for me to be out of the office, and I am not actually a millennial, but I couldn't miss the opportunity, so I booked my flight to D.C. Sophie wasn't available to join me at the event, so I was joined instead by a couple of my friends who live in D.C. and are friends of the podcast, Ann Majette and Gabby Goldstein. The Millennial Media Row is a bit like speed dating, but with U.S. representatives. We sat at a table with our microphones, and the representatives and their staffers would walk around the room, and they'd stop briefly to talk with different media outlets. I have the very niche and rarely useful skill of being able to identify by sight a pretty high percentage of the Democratic House caucus. And that skill, although rarely useful, was very useful that night and served me quite well at the event. I didn't get to talk to every representative in the room. I sadly wasn't able to talk to Representative Barbara Lee, for instance. But in the end, I was able to interview 8 different representatives, including Maxine Waters, along with a couple of other special guests. The representatives are clearly much more used to talking in noisy rooms than I am, as you'll hear. I sound like I'm shouting for at least some of the interviews, but they sound totally normal and relaxed. 201, the representatives were so gracious and so inspirational. I hope that you will enjoy listening as much as I enjoyed recording. And thank you with all my heart to Representative Maxine Waters and to her communications director, Rikia Dorsey-Craig, for inviting us to participate. It was truly the thrill of a lifetime. The first person you will hear is Representative Maxine Waters of California. She's actually the last person that I interviewed, and I think that we were the last outlet that she stopped to talk to. There were about 20 outlets in the room. But despite how exhausted she must have been by that time, and despite the fact that she was nearly losing her voice, Representative Waters' message encourages us to keep fighting. A lot of our listeners, a lot of my friends are feeling very despondent right now. So what inspires you? What would you like the message for all of us to be to keep going and keep fighting?
My message is that we can never give up fighting for what is right. That we live in a democracy and that our democracy will be weakened constantly by such people as the President of the United States if we don't stand up for democracy. And so we can never give up fighting for democracy. We must ensure that we are part of decision-making in this country by registering, by voting, paying attention to our school boards, paying attention to our city councils, state legislatures, and certainly the Congress of the United States of America. That we have influence and we have power, but we've got to use it. So we cannot be deterred from the mission of strengthening the democracy. And when we see someone who is so destructive, as we have seen in this president, we should be more inspired to use our power to undo the possibility that this president can continue to abuse his power and that no other president should be allowed to do it. I was just talking about, we've got to create a whole new body of law, because we never understood that the power of the presidency would be abused in the manner that it has been. And so when you take a look at what he's done, there was nothing to stop him. And so that's why we've got to create a body of law, understanding this abuse, and have laws that are now initiated and supported to not allow this to happen again. The very first person that I got to interview was Representative Pramila Jayapal of Washington. She is the co-chair of the House Progressive Caucus and the author of the Medicare for All bill.
I had seen Representative Jayapal in person several times. She's been at various events that I had been at, panels and other events, but I'd never had the opportunity to actually meet her. She'd been on my 2-interview dream list for a long time, and I was so excited to finally get to talk to her. When representatives walk up to the tables, their staffers would hand us these info sheets about them so you could know a little bit about what committees they were on and what their interests were. By and large, I didn't really even look at the info sheets because I knew who most of them were, but I did notice that on Representative Jayapal's sheet, it said that Pramila rhymes with vanilla. So if you're ever trying to remember how to say her name, now you know.
We're here with Representative Pramila Jayapal. Hello, Representative.
Hi, how are you? It's great to be with you.
We're at this sort of momentous moment in American history. How are you framing sort of looking forward and what's next and how we focus on what's to come?
We have to get a new president who actually respects all the branches of government and doesn't feel himself to be above the law, and frankly...
Or herself.
Or herself, exactly. Yes, good correction, right. And I think, frankly, we need some new senators as well who are actually willing to put the Constitution and their responsibility to the country ahead of being wrapped around the little finger of a guy that happens to be in the Oval Office and doesn't seem to respect that role.
Do you still feel hopeful about America?
You know, I'm an immigrant who came here when I was 16 years old with nothing in my pocket, and now I'm one of 14 naturalized citizens in the United States Congress. So it's hard not to feel hopeful. I think that we have immigrants particularly who come, and every generation, you know, every person in the country has that in their history somewhere. But I think that we are so used to thinking both about the gratitude that we have to the country and what it gave us, and also the responsibility to pay it forward. Plus, I'm an organizer, and organizers are always optimistic. So I am optimistic, but it's because of the people and because of what people across the country are doing to build a movement to change politics today.
What's your advice for women who want to run for office, especially immigrant women, naturalized citizens who want to run for office?
I've been doing a lot of work on that, and we've managed to I was the first South Asian American woman in the state legislature, and now there are 4. I was the only woman of color in the state Senate. Now there are multiples. And so I've been really working on that. My advice is, number 1, believe in yourself. Don't ever let anybody tell you that you're not the right person to run or that you can't do it. And secondly, think about what you want to do, not what you want to be. I really think it's good when people work in the community and work on an issue that they care about. And I like organizers, so I tell people to get involved in really fighting for an issue and getting to know their community and then run, because you can bring so much more. But, you know, the change is a-coming. The times they are a-changing, and women of color are at the front of that, I think. Thank you.
Right after I spoke with Representative Jayapal, I managed to talk to her Progressive Caucus co-chair, Representative Mark Pocan of Wisconsin, who happens to be Sophie's representative. As you'll hear, we recorded this right before the State of the Union, and Representative Pocan's hopes for what we might hear in the State of the Union obviously did not bear fruit.
Well, you know, we're hoping that the President of the State of the Union tonight does what a normal president would do, which is, you know, try to maybe highlight some things you've done and highlight what you want to do for the remaining of the year. There's a lot of things that I think we could work on, from infrastructure spending to addressing prescription drug pricing and some other issues. But you never know with this president what he might bring up. If you would have asked me a couple of years ago if we would have a Space Force today, I would not have bet that. So it could be some surprises tonight. But it hopefully will lay out some of the things that we get done for the remainder of the year.
So Wisconsin, obviously super, super important state this year, 2020. What would you like people, especially from nearby states? I'm from Illinois. What can we be doing to help out in Wisconsin?
Yeah, you know, I was just spent the last couple of weekends in Iowa. In fact, I got 2 hours of sleep last night coming back from Iowa. And a lot of buses came in from Chicago, Central Illinois, etc., and Wisconsin into Iowa. And I think the same will happen with people going to Illinois and Illinois coming to Wisconsin. And that's great because, you know, the more people we have that can knock on doors and talk to people about candidates, the more we're keeping democracy nice and vibrant. So be active, pick the candidate you like best, and come on to Wisconsin.
And I want to let you get to other people too, but what inspires you right now? What sort of keeps you going?
I just think the prospects for the November elections, I would be lying if I didn't say the last 3 years have been really tough with Donald Trump as president. Many of the things that, I spent my life believing in value-wise has been under attack under this president. And just the fact that I think we have an opportunity to change, and so many people are desperate for that, especially in my district. So just, knowing that the end is near, hopefully, for the Trump presidency. Yes, the good end. That will kind of keep me going.
As longtime listeners know, Two Broads Talking Politics talked to a lot of the 2018 Democratic challengers for the U.S. House. But one of them who I had very much wanted to interview but had never quite managed to connect with was Representative Debbie Mucarsel-Powell of Florida. And we finally got to connect on Tuesday, and we had just this wonderful conversation. Her story is so inspirational, and she's the kind of leader that just really makes you want to fight for what's right. She convinced me, I'm pretty sure, to go knock on doors in Florida, which, is combining a few things that I wouldn't necessarily always want to do. So I hope you'll enjoy.
I see you wearing an ERA Yes pin. Tell us what we can all do to make sure that this ERA, now that it's been ratified by 38 states, goes through.
We in the House of Representatives, we're going to be passing a resolution to ensure that it's ratified. So I think bringing awareness, most women don't even know that we're still dealing with this issue 100 years later. We're still dealing with the issue of equality. So I think bringing awareness as women so that they're empowered to come out and represent our voices in every election to make sure that they elect people that are going to protect their rights.
What are you looking forward to as 2020 goes on? What are the things that you're really hoping besides the ERA that the House is going to be working on and that you're really excited about for this year?
I'm really excited about a package. This is not so exciting when you talk about it, but we just introduced a huge infrastructure plan that would invest almost $800 billion in our infrastructure. I've been working on the environment and the climate crisis, sea level rise in South Florida. I represent an area where we are ground zero for the effects of climate change. So this plan would really help with water infrastructure projects and resiliency, better transportation. But I think one of the issues that is very important as a mom to me, and I'm sure like so many mothers, is the safety of our communities. I personally lost my father to gun violence, so it's an issue that's very close to me. I am one of the chairs for the Gun Violence Task Force, so I will be working on legislation that will provide support to survivors more than anything, because we have all this legislation that we're passing to bring gun reform to the country. But we're forgetting that so many families are left behind, and even survivors of gun violence. And we need to make sure that we also take care of those families. So I'm going to be working on legislation for survivors of gun violence.
We have a lot of moms who listen to the podcast. I'm a mom myself, and a lot of them are interested in getting more involved in politics. What's your advice for moms who are thinking about getting involved in politics?
I think we need more moms in office. I think that it's a very difficult job right now. There's still a lot of bias and sexism, but it is so important to have people like me and some of my colleagues who are mothers, who are women that are paving the way for other women. So what I'm doing locally is trying to help other moms that are thinking of running for city council or House state seats. We need moms everywhere. I mean, when you look at the legislation that we're trying to pass, you always see it through a lens of a mother. We're caretakers. We know how to negotiate. I have a 14-year-old. I know how to negotiate. Believe me, if I can get him to do what I need him to do, I can get the Republicans to sign on to some of the bills that we're trying to pass. So it's not easy, but I know that we can really be the change that this country needs. And one of the things that I have also worked on and focused on being a mom is talking to kids. I go to a lot of high schools and I have conversations with them. At the State of the Union, I brought a 16-year-old who's working on the environment, doing a lot of research for coral restoration. So as moms, we know that there are future, that there is hope when we see our kids and the things that they want to do and helping them get there. So it's not easy, but it can be done, and we need more of them. And I'm willing to help any mom that's ready to take office.
And Florida, of course, always a super important state, politically, definitely important in the 2020 election. What are some ways that people from around the country can be helping out in Florida?
I'm going to need all my moms all over the country help me come down and knock on doors and make phone calls, because people always seem to think that we can't win Florida, that Florida's crazy. Yes, it's a little crazy, but we can win Florida. And every president since 1973 that has gone to the White House won the state of Florida. We have to win Florida to change the White House in 2020. So I expect a whole army of moms to come down to Florida's 26th district. It'll be hot, but I'll make sure that I give you good food, good ceviche. You can bring your kids. We'll have the kids come and join us. We need activism. We need people walking on the streets. We need people to wake up. If we can't change the White House in 2020, we will lose our democracy. And I don't mean to exaggerate or be overly dramatic, but it will happen.
I said before that I can recognize a lot of members of the House Democratic Caucus by sight, but to my knowledge, there is only one who can identify me by sight, and that is the wonderful Representative Lauren Underwood of Illinois. She had only a moment to stop by our table, but it was well worth that moment.
I'm here with one of my favorite congresswomen, Representative Lauren Underwood. So what are you looking forward to moving forward? How are we going to keep this democracy going?
Listen, we are showing up every day to work to lower health care costs for the American people. It was the number one issue in 2018. It remains number one in this 2020 election. The president wants to run and hide from his health care promises, but we know there's a lot of work to do, and we're showing up every day to do it. Thank you so much. I'm so glad to be back on the Two Broads Talking podcast.
Thank you.
Okay.
In October 2018, we interviewed a candidate who seemed to everyone like a very long shot to win. But Representative Kendra Horn shocked everyone in November of 2018 when she won in the Oklahoma 5th District. I was so excited to see her again on Tuesday. I apologize for the sound in this segment, especially in the second half. I was having some microphone issues during this interview, and I did as much cleanup as I could, but it's hard to clean things up after the fact. But I think it's such a meaningful conversation that I wanted to include it. Bear with the audio, and I promise the next segment, the audio gets a little bit better again.
Yeah, well, I think our win in 2018 was really about persistence. It was about focus, and it was about meeting the needs of our communities. And that's really what it was always about finding those places where we could get to solutions, where we could remember that we've got a lot more in common when we're tackling the important issues facing us, education, healthcare, other issues. We've got to look for that common ground if we're going to make a pathway forward. And we've had a great response on the ground. Of course, there's a lot happening, but we have had many town halls. We're recognized as one of the top 10 most accessible freshmen last year. And I think people are ready to have those conversations. They're ready to look at ways we can expand access and opportunities and understand that we don't have to choose between policies that are good for people and policies that are good for our pocketbooks, that we can lift up voices like my guest tonight, Gina Nelson, the Oklahoma 2020 Teacher of the Year, and the importance of investing in education. We can solve problems like the crisis of student loan debt in ways that are sensible, that understand that much of the solutions that we have to get to are not in the extremes. They are in the practical steps that we take to invest in our communities and the people that most need the help. So
are you hopeful then looking forward? It seems like such a divisive time, but it sounds like from what you're saying that you see a way forward for us to all come together.
I am hopeful. I'm hopeful because we got a lot done just in the last year. The things that we were able to accomplish, even in the midst of a lot of really divisive partisan rhetoric, we should stop and acknowledge that. We were able to pushing on with Democrats and Republicans working together, encouraging people to stay at the table. We got the USMCA done, which not only updated an important trade agreement, it did so with increased enforcement provisions and worker protection. We stayed at the table. We got that done. When I was sworn in just over a year ago, the government was closed down. We kept it open, and not only did we do that, we didn't do it with the CR, we funded the government with appropriations bills. We passed a defense authorization bill that not only invested in the largest pay raise for our troops in a decade, 3.1%, we passed a tenants' bill of rights to deal with housing issues, and we included paid parental leave for all federal employees, as well as modernizing our infrastructure. There's a lot we can do. And just a couple of weeks ago, I introduced a bipartisan NASA authorization bill that I had worked on with my colleagues across the aisle. And I know that with issues like education, which are so important to us, healthcare, the price of prescription drugs, addressing some of those critical issues, if we put our minds to it, we can do it. But we have to look for it. There's a lot of noise. But we have to continue. Because if we just look at how we disagree with people, how we don't like people, how we can't get anything done, what you see is what's going to happen. So I prefer to see what's possible and work towards solutions.
Representative Jan Schakowsky of Illinois has been on the podcast before. She was on a Vote Her In segment, and I was thrilled to talk to her again. Somehow, despite having interviewed Representative Schakowsky and having been at the same events that she's been at for years now, this was the first time I actually managed to get a selfie with her, which was pretty exciting. I am definitely a Jan fan, as they say. In this clip, you'll also get to hear from her State of the Union guest, Geri Sanchez Aglipay. Geri is the Midwest Manager of Outreach, Educational, and Policy Efforts at Small Business Majority.
Well, I am here with Representative Jan Schakowsky from Illinois. I live in Chicago, so near and dear to my heart. So I see you wearing an ERA Yes pin. So what should we all be doing to make sure that ERA, now that it's ratified by 38 states, goes forward and becomes part of the Constitution?
So now that we have the number of states that we need, the challenge is to change the date. Now, actually, the head of the archives has the power, just ministerially, to do it. So I know one of our leaders is going to meet with him and talk to him about changing that date. It's ridiculous to not do that. We have the number. We're not in the Constitution. It's 100 years since we have the vote. This is the year. So that's in part what the white that women are wearing to our women. You know, we have a record number of women. There are now 103 women in the Congress. 90 of those are Democrats. We're wearing white. Some aren't going, but there are going to be a number of fierce women there wearing white that we hope will send a message that we're strong, we have bigger numbers than ever, and that women are going to save us and will help. So ERA, isn't it time for us to be in the Constitution?
Yes. So we're in this wild moment in American history, of course. What inspires you? What keeps you going?
Well, this is existential, this election. I mean, life and death. Whether or not life will survive on this planet, whether or not we're going to destroy ourselves with atomic weapons. I mean, this is it. I've never experienced as more important an election than this one. We are seeing us going in absolutely the wrong direction with this president. I do believe, by the way, that I'm very optimistic about winning, and I think women are going to lead the way on that. If for no other reason, forget all the issues. Who talks like that? Who talks like that? I was told about a kid wearing a T-shirt that said, "My mom won't let me talk like Donald Trump." I mean, it's just, and I think he's so offensive. But healthcare, access to good jobs, good paying jobs. Women really are 2/3 of the minimum wage workers in this country. They are single moms, not able to get afford the health care or the prescription drugs. That's why I have, as a guest, Geri, my friend Geri is here today, a constituent of mine, who heads up the Small Business Majority in the Midwest, but also the national program to help women entrepreneurs. Can she say a few words?
Yes. So we're so glad that you're here with us as well. Can you tell me a little bit about what it means to be here and what you would like to see moving forward?
Yes. Hi, I'm Geri Aglipay, Midwest Outreach Manager for the Small Business Majority. I also am the National Manager for Women's Entrepreneurship across our offices nationwide. Very happy to be here. Thank you, Congresswoman, for inviting me. We're here because we would like to see the Affordable Care Act protected, pre-existing conditions maintained, protections against that, but most especially because women entrepreneurs, there are over 9 million women entrepreneurs like yourselves in this country, contributing over $1 trillion to the economy and creating jobs for other women as well. So we'd like to see the Affordable Care Act protections maintained, most especially when you think about birth control. We've actually done research with women entrepreneurs regarding birth control. And a majority of them say that the protections in place for the Affordable Care Act for accessible and affordable birth control has actually helped them manage their bottom line, control their expenses, and build their businesses to build wealth for the future and close the women's wealth gap, where women retire with 80% less wealth than men, 80 times less. So being an entrepreneur as yourselves is actually helping to close the wealth gap for women as well. And healthcare is one of those top issues of concern for women entrepreneurs.
Representative Schakowsky, you have endorsed Elizabeth Warren in the primary. What would it mean to have a woman president?
Oh, I think it's time. It's not just time to have a woman, but I think it's time to have a strong, unafraid woman, a woman who's who's willing to say that she's going to fight for the kinds of changes and not just tweak around the edges, but fundamental change so that we end this rigged economy that we have that is only making the rich richer. It's deliberate, and it's a choice that children go hungry. It is a choice that people are homeless. It's a choice that women and men too don't have the health care that they need. That's how economy is built right now. And so it takes somebody who really knows how to make those changes, who is not afraid to fight with Donald Trump and not afraid to make bold choices for our country.
A portion of the audio from our next guest, Representative Gwen Moore of Wisconsin, didn't record correctly. Luckily, some of it was salvageable, and it's really wonderful. I'm very sad that we had a little bit of it cut off. I was afraid that might happen with such a hectic event. It was hard to always tell if the microphones were capturing things correctly. And we unfortunately didn't get a little bit of her comments about the importance of art. So I very much hope that we're able to get her back on the podcast at some point, and we can elaborate on that because it was really great. But the part that we do have is also just really fantastic.
We're very divided in the country, but we all care about the same issues: healthcare, high cost of prescription drugs, and income inequality. And finding out how to talk about those things is really important.
What inspires you? What keeps you going?
I think what inspires me are children. Whenever I get really down and out, I just spend a few minutes playing with the little kids. It reminds me of why I do this.
Our very last segment is with Representative Moore's guest for the State of the Union, screenwriter and Milwaukee native John Ridley, who won the Academy Award for Best Adapted Screenplay in 2014 for 12 Years a Slave. I hope that his words are as uplifting for you as they were for me.
Is this your first time coming to the State of the Union?
Yeah. I mean, it's irrespective of who may be speaking or what party is in power. This is the seat of government, and this is the House of the people. So to have the opportunity to be here, to have the opportunity to witness what's going on, it's inspiring. And to walk the halls, to see the monuments, to see a picture of Shirley Chisholm, to see a bust of Martin Luther King, to see one of the newest statues here, Rosa Parks. It makes you understand that people who are outsiders, people who are agitators, people who are changed, at some point they become enshrined. So I would say to people, they may feel like outsiders, they may feel otherized, but you may not live to see your legacy, but others will live to witness it. So I know there are young people out there, there may be a lot of people out there who are discouraged, but they should be encouraged because the fights they fight do matter, and not give up on government, not give up on politics, because it is of and for the people.
Thank you for listening to Two Broads Talking Politics, part of the Dimcast Podcast Network. Our theme song is called Are You Listening off of the album Elephant Shaped Trees by the band Immunuri, and we're using it with permission of the band. Our logo and other original artwork is by Matthew Wethlin and was created for use by this podcast. You can contact us at twobroadstalkingpolitics@gmail.com or on Twitter or Facebook at twobroadstalk. You can find all of our episodes at twobroadstalkingpolitics.com or anywhere podcasts are found.